What's going on, guys? My name is Austin. This is the Bodies in Business podcast, and it is day 11 of the 25 Days of Fly Bodies. And in this episode, we're going to talk about dopamine because you need to know what dopamine is going into 2026 and why it's so important. So let's just jump right in. Dopamine is a neurotransmitter, a chemical messenger your brain uses to communicate between neurons. It plays a central role in motivation, mood regulation, movement, reward, reinforcement learning, focus, and drive. Dopamine is not just the pleasure chemical, which most people think it's, you get these dopamine hits. It's not just pleasure chemical. It's more accurately the anticipation and motivation chemical. It gets you to take action. There's a great book that if you're more interested about learning what dopamine is after you listen to this great podcast, a book called Dopamine Nation written by Anna Lemke. It's so helpful. She's a researcher at Stanford and she does an incredible job of explaining what dopamine is and why it's so important and why it makes us do the things we do and how it involves like addiction. So I'm also going to go right now into why dopamine is linked to motivation. Dopamine spikes before the reward, not just after. This rise creates desire, drive, and the energy to pursue goals. Your brain uses dopamine to say, that thing is worth going after, let's move. All right. That's what dopamine does. It says, hey, I want to do that thing. And dopamine starts firing in your body and it gets you up. If I really wanted to go outside right now, dopamine would be like, hey, let's go do it. But I'm doing this. So this is why I'm making this podcast. Low dopamine equals procrastination, low drive, feeling flat. Healthy dopamine equals motivation, ambition, and willingness to act. All right. So why dopamine affects your mood? Dopamine influences feelings of satisfaction, enthusiasm, hopefulness, engagement with life. When dopamine levels are healthy, you feel capable and optimistic. When they're low, people often experience low mood, fatigue, and loss of interest. Classic signs of dopamine deficiency. Why dopamine is essential for movement. All right. And going back to what I just said, there are ways to increase your dopamine in your body. And I'm going to tell you about those because you want to improve or increase your dopamine levels in your body naturally. You don't always want to artificially raise your dopamine levels because then you're going to always look for those avenues to increase your dopamine because it's fun. You're not doing something, you don't think of it in the moment. You're like, oh, I really want dopamine, I'm going to go do that. Most of the time you're like, oh, I want some type of reward, I'm going to go do that. But let's go on. Why dopamine is essential for movement. Dopamine pathways in the brain help coordinate smooth, controlled movement. In fact, Parkinson's disease is caused by the loss of dopamine-producing neurons, which leads to tremors and slow movement. Now, I'm going to talk about a research study that was done to prove that it has a major effect on Parkinson's disease. Dopamine does. After talking about all this, I'm getting tongue-tied here. Healthy ways to increase dopamine naturally. Exercise, getting morning sunlight, eat tyrosine-rich foods, dopamine's building blocks. So dopamine is made from the amino acid tyrosine, which is really, really cool to hear because in your body needs building blocks to make dopamine. So you have to eat foods that are rich in tyrosine, which is an amino acid, in order to make dopamine. So what foods are rich in tyrosine? Eggs, chicken, turkey, fish, Greek yogurt, cheese, beans, lentils, nuts, seeds. So all those foods you can start getting in your diet so your body can actually produce more dopamine. It needs those nutrients, tyrosine, the amino acid, in order to make more dopamine, which is really cool to hear. So I'm going to say them again. Eggs, chicken, turkey, fish, Greek yogurt, cheese, beans, and lentils, nuts, especially almonds, seeds. You got an array of foods that have tyrosine. And I'm sure you can look up other lists of foods that have tyrosine. All right. Number 4, prioritize sleep, cold exposure, listen to music you love, accomplish small wins. Those aren't super helpful, but reduce ultra-processed foods and dopamine spikes. Big dopamine spikes come with big crashes. So that's something you'll learn in the book, the Dopamine Nation, that with every dopamine spike comes a dip in dopamine. So that's when, I'll give you an example. I'll tell you, like, whenever I wrestled and I'd wrestle in a tournament, I'd wrestle probably like 4 or 5 matches and I would feel so good that I won that after I was done with the tournament, I almost felt kind of like not depressed, but I was feeling like, oh man, like I feel kind of sad a little bit sometimes. And it was because my levels of dopamine were so high during the tournament that your dopamine levels tend to decrease if you have a high dopamine spike. All right. So if you go to a concert or go do something that's really, really enjoyable, and then afterwards you feel like not as high, you don't feel as happy, it's probably because your body's like, hey, you just used a lot of the dopamine in your body because you had a great time. Now we have to replenish those dopamine stores. All right. And the last one is practice meditation and breath work. All right. Some people like that. Okay. So the other thing I want to finish on right here is this famous dopamine rat study that showed why dopamine is so important in Parkinson's disease. Researchers wanted to understand why Parkinson's patients lost the ability to move smoothly. So they experimented with rats by selectively destroying dopamine producing neurons in a region of the brain called the substantia nigra, which sends dopamine to the movement control center known as the striatum. They used a neurotoxin called 6-hydroxydopamine, 6-ODA, to eliminate dopamine cells on one side of the rat's brain. What happened next was groundbreaking. The rats lost almost all ability to initiate movement on the side where dopamine neurons were destroyed. They showed severe motor impairments, very similar to human Parkinson's symptoms. When researchers gave the rats L-Dopa, a dopamine-boosting drug, the rats regained movement almost instantly. This was the aha moment that proved dopamine is essential for initiating controlled movement. Lack of dopamine equals inability to move. Restoring dopamine equals restoring movement. This discovery was so important that Arvid and Carlson, I hope I'm saying that right, won the 2000 Nobel Prize in Physiology or Medicine for demonstrating the role of dopamine in movement. Pretty cool. I don't know. I find that fascinating. Maybe you do, maybe you don't. Dopamine's super important. And hopefully this video made you realize, hey, I need to do these things to up my dopamine levels naturally so that I can be more motivated, so I can move more, so that I am in a better mood. And this will motivate you to want to do better things in life or go out and get the things you want in life. So that's all. Hopefully that's helpful. Dopamine's super interesting, and you might not be as excited as I am, but hopefully that you learned a little something and you found that useful. So thanks for watching, guys, and get after it.